So let's look at Belarus now. Maybe we can come back to Greece in just a minute, and certainly we will. But Belarus, I think, is very newsworthy. There's a whole country to get to know, right? Belarus, hated by the Anglo-Americans, hated by Hillary Clinton, by Kerry. They call Lukashenko the last dictator in Europe. Well, bring it on. He is going to defend this country better than some neoliberal mushhead who would come in with IMF shock therapy and so forth. And I have proof of that here in just a minute. Lukashenko, as you know, last week, he imposed a 30% fee, a 30% tax, if you will. You want to export capital out of Belarus. You want to change Belarus rubles into dollars, pounds, euros, yen. Wonderful. Pay a 30% tax. So that's one. And if you have money coming in, if you're an exporter, you've got to change half of that into Belarus rubles. Now, I'm looking here at the very interesting website, Belarusian News, Belarusian News, national source of news, BELTA. And we'll tell you what they're saying, but we'll be keeping tabs on them in the coming weeks and months. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, you will have noticed the 25th of January, the Greek elections coming up. And that's going to be a very big day. That's going to be an anti-austerity, anti-IMF, anti-derivatives. It's actually anti-conditionalities. The Greeks call this memorandum. The memorandum is the memorandum concerning the IMF conditionalities that the Greek government accepted back under, if not Samaras, then previously under the PASOK. So this is a very bad thing. So this is going to be a turning point, I believe, in current history to come on top of the ones that we've just had in 2014. But you'll notice that our course in economics here, the 23rd, the 24th, and 25th, the Econothon in Washington, the Econothon will be the political economy of the American system, 23rd, 24th, 25th of January. And I have to ask for patience again between the Pinckney case and the holidays. We have not yet been able to sign the contract for the venue. So don't go out and buy a ticket quite yet. We're very confident that this will work, but I don't want to hurt anybody. So therefore, cool it for a little bit, and in the first week of the new year, at the latest, we'll have it. But it's likely to be 23rd, 24th, 25th of January, meaning that on the afternoon and evening of the 25th of January, we will be celebrating here the victory of Alexis Tsipras and of Syriza, the demise of the austerity ghouls of Greece. And from there, of course, radiating out from the Acropolis, where Plato, our main man, started his activity, we'll be seeing that the world will change. Changing already, certainly. The Belarus situation, once again, telling us how interesting all of this is. So first of all, the 30% tax on capital exports or changing, and the 50% obligatory support activity in favor of the Belarus ruble. Now, here in the Belarusian News, Belarus-IAN, it's only one S, News, we have an article by it's actually an interview with Alexander Zaborowski. Alexander Zaborowski, the head of the Secretariat of the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister, and I take it this is now the new one, which I think it certainly is, the newly named Prime Minister is Kabiakou, Kabiakou, Prime Minister Kabiakou of Belarus. So we're hearing from Alexander Zabarovsky, his principal advisor. He's the head of the secretariat, I guess, the chief of staff. He's first deputy chief of the Council of Ministers office. Okay. So he says essentially that these measures have been successful. The first important effect of the decisions undertaken by the government and the National Bank was their ability to reverse almost immediately the plans of households and other holders of rubles, and to show that the market yield, to show the market that the yield on Belarusian ruble deposits will be higher than that of deposits in foreign currency. In the first half of December, people actively exchanged their Belarusian rubles for foreign currency without any solid reasons for doing so. This is a nice way of saying that London and New York were attempting to foment a panic, not just in the Russian ruble, but also in the Belarusian ruble. Because if you can destabilize Belarus and bring down Lukashenko with a color revolution, you can then push your NATO membership right deep into the historical heartland of Russia, right? If you got Minsk, you're practically at Smolensk and you're well on your way to Moscow, right? Although there's many a slip, as has been discovered. Also very, very interesting, the proceeds from this tax will be added not for the polar bears, the penguins, or the snail darters, but to the Treasury. It will help the budget situation. And how about this? All major banks in Belarus are introducing fixed-term safeguarded savings accounts. It sounds like a certificate of deposit, where Belarusian ruble deposits will be indexed to the exchange rate of the Belarusian ruble fluctuations. In other words, you've got a combination of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which will guarantee your deposits, and you've got inflation protection, like one of those TIP bonds, right? TIP, inflation protected. These will now be inflation protected, insured certificates of deposit, the way I read this article. And that was, this is all coming out of the decisions announced by Lukashenko on the 19th of December. Hey, the Anglo-Americans, though, were not happy. Here I have Noviny.by, by Belarus. Noviny, well, Noviny in Ukrainian, Novosti in Russian, and Noviny in Belarusian. So here we find that a number of the news sites coming out of Belarus were attacked by hackers on December 20th. So, what is it that the Anglo-Americans didn't want you to hear about these measures, I guess, and how significantly successful they have been? Now, we also want to pay attention to a policy statement here from the president of the country. And let's see if we can find it. Lukashenko says there must be no hoarding of foreign currencies, dollars, euros, pounds, yen. No hoarding of foreign currencies. He repeats that there is a state guarantee on deposits, that the wealth of the country is the economic strength of the country is located in its wealth and in its currency and in its reserves. Fine. He says that it is necessary to regulate commercial banks, this is interesting, the central bank will be held responsible for the stability of bank credit. Now, this is because he has installed a new head of the central bank who is now on the hot seat, and this guy deserves to be on the hot seat. We'll have more in just a minute. World Crisis Radio. The man of the hour, President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus. speaking out on plans to stabilize the economy. So this was, I guess, his year-end press conference. And sovereign strategy, the national and financial sovereignty strategy of Belarus and its currency will be based on national wealth, the country's currency reserves, and the gold reserves. Belarus should have no more shocks. State interests must prevail over corporate interests, meaning oligarchs, right? They have them too. No more shocks. State interests must prevail over corporate interests. And we want to be less dependent on other currencies. In other words, not simply in the orbit of the Federal Reserve, which even Russia continues to be. Credit has to be used for vitally important projects and to actuate existing business plans. He calls for the reducing of the dollarization of the economy. And again, if you have dollars, if they're coming in, you've got to sell half of them as soon as you get them. We need real efficient measures that will yield concrete results in the growth of deposits and credits in the national currencies. Among other interesting quotes, banks must support the state and not vice versa. Right on. Not the banks for the banks, but the banks for a national interest, which the government is better situated to judge than they are. Lukashenko also says, why is it that bank profits are so much higher than the profits of any other sector? That is abnormal. That has to end. He's also in the process of finalizing another nuclear reactor for Belarus. So they'll have guaranteed national nuclear energy, the cheapest, the safest compared to old reactors or coal mines or these other things. Therefore, this is a country that's on its way to assert sovereignty. It's not going to be rolled over. Now, interestingly enough, the liberals, the mushheads of Belarus are screaming. They're not happy. They're complaining that, of course, he purged the Lukashenko purged the cabinet last on the 19th when he started this whole thing, and here is a neoliberal from inside it. This is called Belarus Digest. This is Brand X, right? These are the bad guys. And here we have Lukashenko reshuffles the government before 2015 election. So they try to say, this is not really economic. This is just that there's going to be a presidential election, and he always scapegoats the people by throwing them out in the year before the election. On 19th of December, the authorities had to make several urgent moves to prevent panic on the foreign currency exchange market following the dramatic slide of the Russian ruble. Lukashenko explicitly prohibited the devaluation of the Belarusian ruble, but demanded some measures to protect hard currency reserves. Now, here's the some of these people move from one area to another, but the most interesting, Andrei Kabyaku, we mentioned him, previously the head of the presidential administration, I guess it means chief of staff of the executive office of Lukashenko, has replaced Myasnikovich as prime minister. Kabyaku has extensive government experience, deputy prime minister 2000 to 2010, worked on the State Control Committee, Minister of Economics, Deputy Head of the Presidential Administration, Ambassador to Russia, well connected in the Kremlin. Good. Now, these neoliberals that we see here, and here they start complaining. You have to pay attention if you want to understand the logic of the state apparatus in Belarus and the principles that govern it. The whole system works to guarantee the stability and security of the president's rule. Well, fine. Better that than Libya, wouldn't you say? And here we see the economic line that these neoliberals here want. This is actually the policy director of the Discussion and Analytical Society Liberal Club of Minsk. So this is the whining coming from the Liberal Club of Minsk. The new people, he says, with one exception, they represent the same views that have dominated Belarusian policy making over the last 2 decades. Massive state property, that is a well-developed state sector. No problem, good thing, especially under these conditions. Government control over the economy, well, dirigism. Administrative measures over market tools under crisis conditions, of course. Pushing for as little reform as possible. Well, reform, of course, means, here's what he means by reform. Nothing appears to indicate that Lukashenko will allow the new government to launch structural reforms that international institutions like the International Monetary Fund or the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, that was supposed to be to renovate Eastern Europe after the fall of the communist regimes. So you can see that there is a neoliberal opposition here in Minsk. Nobody escapes the presence of these characters, but it is a highly, highly interesting thing. So we're watching all of this with great interest, and above all, to what extent it's being followed or it's coordinated or otherwise tells us things about what's going on in Russia. Now let's take a look at this. According to Reuters, on the 23rd of December, Christmas Eve, I didn't get to this in time for the previous broadcast. I hadn't seen it. The ruble on that day, Russian ruble now, this is a Russian ruble, hit its highest levels in 2 weeks, shored up by informal capital control measures designed to head off a repeat of the inflation and protests that marked Russia's 1998 financial crisis. Might as well call that the 1998 state bankruptcy and default on GKOs. So here is what we have. Putin has pledged not to resort to full-fledged controls. Well, let's see what we have in the terms of half-fledged controls. Economists say the measures were a softer version of capital controls. Here's what happened. The government has already forced government exporters to sell their dollars, and the same thing will happen for the banks. So in a sense, capital controls are already in place, says the renegade Sergei Guriev, an exiled economist who fled Russia after criticizing Putin. Medvedev said on Christmas Eve, Russia risks deep recession. That's the same line coming from Kudrin. I don't know why Medvedev is still there if he's simply a playback agent for Kudrin. They have Standard & Poor's is fixing to attack. Standard & Poor's has put Russia's credit outlook on Credit Watch with negative implications preparatory to a downgrade. Kudrin says Russia will be downgraded to junk next year. We'll give you the details of these controls in just a second. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. It's our Epiphany broadcast. We're looking forward to a mass strike upsurge in January, centered on the Greek elections on the 25th of January, and anti-IMF, anti-austerity, anti-shock therapy. The government is likely to be elected in Greece. At the same time, Belarus is fighting the IMF with capital controls and exchange controls. And now let's see what Russia is doing. They're already, what can we say, nudging exporters to sell dollars and other hard currency and buy rubles. That's a support operation for the ruble. Medvedev repeating that alarmist propaganda from Kudrin. What is this? And of course, the Standard & Poor's indicted in Italy, or some of them, one or two of the others, by our friend Michele Ruggiero. But those guys are impudently leading the charge. Now let's look at these unofficial controls. What do we have? On Tuesday last week, the 23rd, the Russian government told large state exporting companies that by March 1st, they must bring their net foreign exchange assets back to the levels of October 1st. They have to report that to the central bank on a weekly basis. One government source says, well, you can keep hard currency if you want to, and you can speculate, but we reserve the right not to help you if and when you hit tough times. I probably ought to do that already. Vladimir Osakovsky from the Bank of America Merrill Lynch, imperialist, says, quote, if exporters are told not to increase their hard currency positions, that can be viewed as an unofficial reintroduction of capital controls. Hallelujah! Now, the other side of it would be, a banker says full capital controls would be a huge immediate blow. Standard & Poor's may be a worse blow. One source close to the government says there was panic last week. Something had to be done. We took some measures. The Russian central bank expects flight capital, hot money fleeing at 130 billion this year. And a lot of that comes out of the resources, the reserves of the country. Another source, as of Monday, December 16th already, currency controllers have been sitting in and monitoring the currency position of banks, checking who bought foreign currency. Well, then the FSB is looking down over the shoulder of these parasitical speculators. We have to report to them all of our activities, finance ministry or central bank. They are very meticulous, said a source at one of the main banks. Tax payments are now falling due at around Christmas time. Remember, the big holiday there is still to come. It's New Year's. This Guriev, the renegade, I guess, he says, I can imagine that for a while they will use these capital control-like measures without full-blown capital controls. But if depreciation continues, they may actually do this. Well, if they do, they will begin to smile broadly when they see the beneficial results. So, this is the course which Russia may take. This faction around Medvedev, Kudrin, Kasyanov, and so forth, they must be defeated. And instead, this other group, the Glaziev group, needs to affirm its supremacy and actually implement this stuff.